Good morning, everyone. I'm here talking about revolutionizing KM with AI-powered search. And you might wonder, what does that have to do with the previous speakers? And by the way, wasn't that a great talk about customer service? And really, what does that have to do with customer service is that to be able to serve customers, to delight them, your employees need to be empowered with the right information, and it needs to be relevant to be able to serve those customers. So it's a really nice tie-in with that. We talk a lot about customer service as well, because to be relevant to your employees means to be relevant to your customers. So as we've heard a lot in the last 2 days, these are really interesting times. We have this sort of convergence of very, very high demands, both from our customers, but also from our employees, because if our employees are being held accountable for delivering customer service, they are demanding more from us as well. But there's also this proliferation of information. There's so much content out there that we really have to empower people to be able to use that. And it has really never been easier to create or share content. I mean, think about how easy it is to just go create a document in a shared drive, and suddenly everyone has access to that. Whether it's right or wrong, or good or bad, it's out there. And we are totally overwhelmed with information. And there's technology. So what's exciting is that while we have these two pressures of demands from our customers and our employees, we also have this proliferation. We also have this great technology that's coming out where we have a lot more ability to use AI and machine learning in real world to be able to do some of this for us. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So when we're talking about great customer service earlier, how many of our employees do you think show up this morning saying, I'm going to make some really terrible decisions today? No, everyone comes to work with some really great intentions, some good intentions to do great things, both for their coworkers, their stakeholders, and for their customers. So what happens? You know, we've heard a lot about, you know, good customer service, bad customer service, good decisions, bad decisions. What happens? Well, you know, I had every intention of parking legally and having, you know, putting my car where it belonged at the right time. But then you get these signs and you think, I have information overload. I don't know what to do. Just tell me what the right thing is to do right now for me. And that's what our employees are facing. That's what people that work in our organizations often face, is that there's so much information. We talked about this proliferation. Well, just tell me what is the best information for me to do my job right now for this particular moment, this particular challenge I'm trying to solve. And you know what, guys? It's not going to get any easier. There's so much information out there. I mean, this is just one example. I threw it on there because it's 1.7 megabytes of new information will be created every second for every human being on the planet. Like, that's a lot to manage, and that's kind of a challenge that you guys are facing, is how do we manage this? This is information, but how do we turn that into knowledge for people? How do we turn that into what I need right now to be able to do my job, to delight that customer, to make those good decisions, and, you know, not park my car where it's going to get towed because I just simply don't know what to do. And what we need to do, and that's what you guys are all working on, is how do we empower them with that information and that knowledge to make those right decisions, to delight the customer at every microsecond, at every interaction they have? How do we empower that? Well, we, as an organization, often produce lots and lots of content, lots of things that we think are really interesting and really important for our employees, for everyone in the organization. But they have a certain subset of what they're looking for, what they need to do their job, what's important for them. And that very tiny overlapping, and hopefully as we get better and better, that overlap, that sort of like intersection in the middle gets bigger, but ultimately that's what's relevant. So what we've produced versus what they need in that moment to do what they're trying to do, that's where we get true relevance. So I would ask you, if you ask yourself, if you ask your employees, how easy is it for you to find the information you need? How many, hands up, how many in the room would give it a 5? Yeah. There's not enough hands up, unfortunately. And really that comes down to, you know, what we talked about earlier. There's so much out there. How do we get the right thing into people's hands when they need it? But imagine if your intranet could learn and recommend. So that's a little bit what we're talking about with the relevance. So what we do at Coveo, and what we've seen people do, whether it's with our technology or other technologies, is really the important thing is to be able to bring these things together. So content is all that great information that's out there, bringing it all together. But that's just one aspect of it. So when we think about, people think about search, people tend to think that this is what search is. It's going out and getting all that content, everyone bringing it together. But that's not enough. What that does is that gives me more information overload. Okay, well, I've given me more choices, you've given me more information, but I can't act on that. I can't make a good decision, even though I came to work with my good intentions today. What I need also is a context. What am I? Who am I? What am I doing? Where did I come from? What have I looked at before? And then you overlay that with intent. What am I trying to do? And the great thing about intranets is that we can extrapolate based on that person's profile, where they work, what the department they're in, but also what other people like them have done. What are they trying to do? We can assume some intent. And we put all those things together, content plus context plus intent, that's where we can find real relevance. That's where if we can put all those things together, and really the only way to do that at scale for the size of most of our organizations is with something like machine learning. So be able to go through and understand and say, you know what? Forget all these results, forget all this content. For you, what you're trying to do right now, today, this piece of content is what you need, and that's how you can delight both your employees, but also the customer. And this leads us to the concept of what you see is what you need next. The idea that we're not just going to point you to a piece of content that you look for, but what do you really need? And that, a great example of that might be, I'm looking for a piece of information. I'm trying to solve a customer's problem. They've called in. They've asked me, how do I reset my router, whatever the case may be. But actually what we found is through machine learning and understanding and looking at patterns of people calling in and asking, is that actually the real problem is another root problem altogether. Imagine the delight that you can delight a customer with is if they call in, they say, here's my problem, and the support person says, you know what? Let me just tell you, we can fix that problem, but let's go right to the root problem and solve that for you. And that support agent may not even known that, but they got directed to that. Imagine what kind of rock star they look like to the customer, that they've not just solved the problem they called in for, but they've proactively solved what's going to happen next. So we've built this maturity model. And I can spend all day going through this. I promise you I won't. But if you do want to learn more, you can come and ask us about it. But really, this is really to give you a clear idea of how you move your way and how you can get towards true relevance. So at the bottom, you see this is sort of siloed search, federated searches. This is negative business impact. This is if someone comes looking for information and we serve them up everything we have with no ranking, with no real context to it, how is that better? Because all that does is that leaves me with more time to spend to sift through it and try and figure out what I really need. In fact, it may put the wrong thing at the top, and I go, I'll just take that. Oh, that's from 5 years ago by someone who actually left the company, and So this is kind of negative impact. And as you go up the ranking, and I encourage you to have a look at this and understand where you sit and give yourself some goals of where you want to get to. You move from where we just start ranking results and giving people a little bit more. Maybe this is probably better than that based on some information that we have designed where we think it's the better content. But as you move up, what you find is you're starting to see more and more context. You see at the bottom, instead of being responsive to what they're asking for, it's starting to be a lot more proactive, really understanding what you're trying to do. So we move from just content navigation through to being able to tune it for relevance, but then moving up into contextual relevance. This is where we really start to understand what this person is doing right now. So if I look for something today, in my role, in marketing today, based on the current challenges and what I'm trying to achieve, versus somebody else looking for the exact same term, who's an accountant, who's doing something different in a different workflow, this is where you start to see different results being served up. And this is how you can start to really push people to what they need to do in their day-to-day job. And then you can move all the way up into contextual suggestions. And then ultimately, the holy grail, where we all want to be, is up in self-learning predictive recommendations. This is really where we can start to make recommendations based on what we know, not just about you, but about what others like you and the wisdom of crowds and what other people have done. This is what we recommend. This is where to go to next. This goes beyond this is the right piece of information. This is, you asked for this, but what you need next is this. Maybe there's another piece of training that you didn't even know existed. Go watch this video. Go watch this 15-minute video on how to do this, giving them more information for what they need. All this gives relevant information for people. What does that mean? What's the impact of that? Well, what we see is that it's irrefutable. People are empowered when they have relevant information that's meaningful, that's to what they're actually trying to achieve, they can do more. So if you have poor relevance, you have poor customer satisfaction, you have customers who can't self-serve, so they're calling into the call center all the time, you have people who are fed up of answering the same question from customers all the time versus being able to answer meaningful things and solve real problems. You can have engineers that can work on more complex projects. You know, if they can go and find something that another engineer has worked on in another part of the organization and build on top of that, it gives a lot better results than starting from scratch. So we can see a really big impact, economic impact of having relevant information. It's having the intelligent workplace powered by relevance really transformed the business. I'm not going to go into all of this, but really, the idea is that you want to be personalized and relevant to the task at hand. And you want to be able to give people insight. The most amazing and powerful thing about having sort of relevant machine learning-based search is that you can empower even new employees, people who don't have the experience of knowing, you know what, when you call in for this problem, it's actually this problem. They don't even need to know that. By the fact that this is what works for other people, that we know what successful outcomes are, and we guide them right to those, that new employee can be a lot more efficient and proficient faster, so that they can have that time shortcutted for them. So you can't listen to me and not have some proof points. We've seen this with a lot of customers. We see that there's a big improvement when you have this sort of relevant information where we actually push people to what you see, what you need next type of information. We're seeing a much quicker time to competency for new hires, for new people getting up and running. They don't have to try and navigate where do I go next, but they're actually being encouraged to go to the right place and get the right information. We see a lot better improvement, a great improvement for customer service in terms of first call resolution and people calling in, getting what they need. You see a lot of all these improvements in employees being more happy and engaged and satisfied. Very quickly, I just want to talk very quickly, just one customer example, and I'm going to touch very quickly on this. You can go onto our YouTube channel and look a little bit about them. But BRP, so hands up anyone who's ever ridden a Skidoo or a snowmobile or a boat powered by Bombardier recreational products, a huge, huge organization from Canada. Yay, Canada. They're the world's leader in providing all these recreational vehicles. And they have 4,500 global partners and dealers that, the place where you go buy all the stuff, and then you go back and you have to have it serviced, and they make, you can see in the bottom right there, just a sampling of the types of things they service and they sell. And then these dealers, who are an extension of their brand, have to then go and service them and make sure they're delighting those customers as an extension of BRP. And what they were really having a hard time is the knowledge management. Their knowledge center for these folks was pretty poor. They had really poor engagement, and they weren't finding what they need, and therefore the dealers were getting frustrated. They didn't want to sell BRP products. Their customers were frustrated because when they'd have a problem, it wasn't getting resolved. So they implemented a brand new knowledge management center using Coveo to power it. And what they found is a huge improvement super fast. Basically what was happening is that now when a dealer goes in, they look up a part number, they don't just get, that spec sheet for that part number. They get all the information. Oh, it looks like this is for this type of snowmobile. Here's the servicing records. Here's what you should be doing this. Here's any recall notices. Here's any type of maintenance that should be done on a regular basis, so that the person looking this up could be immediately empowered and appear as a complete expert to their customers without really having to do any work on their own. So they suddenly were empowered with knowledge, not just data, of what to do next and what needs to be done for this customer and how do you delight them. What's interesting about this project, so Jasmine from BRP gave an amazing presentation at our client conference recently. And this was my favorite slide in the whole presentation, because he put it up there. And how many of you have implemented projects and had training as a huge line item in terms of both time, resources, and cost? It's usually a big thing, right? And when they put this in, they said, you know what? We had $50,000 for training, and we scratched it off. And he said, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say that if we need training for our knowledge center, we've failed. Like, this is just, we can't do that. So they said there's no training. This is has to be easy to use, and we have to be intuitively guiding people to what they want. And you know what? They didn't do training, and they had amazing results. They had huge adoption. They had 2.6 million queries in 8 months, which was sort of like a huge astronomical increase. They got great engagement from their dealers. And more than half of the clicks on the articles that people were getting were coming from machine learning recommendations. That is, the machine learning was looking at what people were looking for, understanding, finding patterns, and then tuning relevance, moving it to the top without any real intervention from people. And those were the results that were getting the best engagement. So it works. They were getting best-in-class click-through rates. And then what also happened is they were able to start managing content gaps. So instead of just running all over the place trying to understand what they needed to build, they were being told, okay, here's the top 25 queries that have poor results. Just build content for these things. It gave them a focus. It gave them a way to make sure that their knowledge management center was truly relevant to their dealers. And it only took 5 months for the first phase and 2 months for phase 2 with a team, I think, of about 4 people. If you want to see more about that, you can go on our YouTube channel. There's a link there, and these slides will be available. And you can go watch that. He gives an amazing presentation, an amazing talk about what they did. So for you guys, actionable next steps, because we all love actionable next steps. First one is to really evaluate. You can use our model as an example. We have some copies of it at our booth if you want to come by. But really to understand where you sit, then linked to that is setting some good short-term and medium-term goals of where you want to get to, improving your relevance to get better results. One of the really important things, I feel like this is a bit like therapy, we have to accept there's things we can't change. People will continue to create content that we don't want them to. People will continue to act in ways, search for things and look for things that we maybe not want them to find, or that we don't want them to keep reinventing the wheel and starting from scratch. They will. So let's just embrace that. And just use search to bring it all together instead of trying to consolidate that. Leverage, really, there are opportunities out there for you. I don't know how many of you still have a GSA, a Google Search Appliance. If you do, and it's going away and you think, oh, I gotta deal with that, that's actually a huge opportunity because you have to replace that. It's going away. This is your chance to get some new technology, and that's gonna achieve some of these things. So don't look at that as a negative, look at that as a great opportunity. And finally, I would encourage you to start now, even baby steps. Things like machine learning and AI need to start. The sooner you start, the more results you're calculating, the more knowledge you're building, and the better results you're going to get. So start now, even with baby steps. So as a final thing I'll leave with you, you can download our white paper about that model that helps you it's really just for you to understand where you sit and where you want to go. You can download that from this website. You can stop by the booth as well, and we have we can talk you through some of that. So thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of KMWorld. It's been a really great conference so far. Thank you so much. Stop by anytime to talk.